Ireland is an island located to the northeast of Britain and southwest of Greenland. The country is surrounded by the Atlantic Ocean and has many cliffsides that are popular attractions for tourism. Ireland also has large stretches of fields used for sheep and other livestock, which are integral to Ireland's exports and economy. The country is known for its constant rain as well as its persistent fog, which prompts the locals to joke about the foul weather. Around 4000 BC marks the first recorded instance of people settling in Ireland. Over the next several hundred years, Ireland would be controlled by the Vikings until they were driven out by King Brian Boru and the Catholic Church. In the mid-1500s, King Henry VIII declared himself king of both England and Ireland and established plantations that brought English and Scottish settlers to Ireland. Penal laws were established by the Protestant majority to take away the rights of many Catholics, such as limiting the amount of land they can own and destroying Catholic churches. After 200 years of British rule, the 1791 United Irishmen Group was formed with the goal of uniting all Irish people against the British to claim full independence. However, in 1801, the Act of the Union was passed, officially giving Britain political control of Ireland. This control mainly came in the form of British landlords who controlled all of the housing and farmlands. Because of this, the Irish farmers were only allowed to eat what they could afford, despite them being the ones producing the vast majority of food being exported to Britain. "1845 marked the beginning of the Irish famine caused by the potato blight, a mold that essentially withered potatoes, making them inedible, taking away the one steady source of food the Irish had access to. 2 million people died from starvation and illness, and another 1 million immigrated to other countries such as the United States before the end of the blight in 1851. There is much controversy surrounding the famine and whether it can be considered a genocide or not. The argument against the ruling is that the British government did not cause the blight, and therefore it cannot be considered a targeted attack. However, those that consider the famine a genocide argue that it was the complacency of the British government that cost the lives of nearly 2 million people. Ireland was also still producing and exporting food other than the potatoes to Britain, and Britain's history of destroying the cultures of the countries it took over imply that their inaction was deliberate. In addition, many British landlords would turn the starving Irish out onto the streets, allowing them to die. In 1914, Ireland joined World War I on the side of the Allies, hoping that cooperation with Britain would help them gain independence. 2 years later, on April 24, 1916, the Easter Rising riots broke out in the streets of Dublin involving two rebel Irish groups, the Irish Volunteers led by Padraig Pearse and the Irish Citizen Army led by James Connolly, and resulting in the executions of the leaders of both groups after their surrender and the deaths of several Irish citizens. The decision to execute the men caused the Irish groups to deepen their hatred of the British government and inspired many to form more groups to oppose their oppressors. The surviving members of the rebel groups formed the Dáil Éireann, or the Irish Republic Parliament, declaring themselves independent. The years between 1919 and 1921 saw Ireland's War of Independence led by Michael Collins. Eventually, a compromise was reached in 1922, stating that Ireland would be independent, with the exception of Northern Ireland, which would remain under the control of the British. Northern Ireland had fought a civil war in 1921 against the rest of Ireland in order to stay united with Britain. And 100 years later, Northern Ireland is still politically separate from Ireland as a whole.
In its early history, Ireland was ruled by its own kings, such as King Brian Boru, who defeated Vikings that invaded the country. However, it was not long until British monarchy took control and ruled in the mid-1500s until 1922. The Irish government changed in tandem with the British, switching from a monarchy to a parliamentary system. When Ireland became independent, it adopted a parliamentary democracy, meaning that the government has both a president and a prime minister. The prime minister is the head of Oireachtas, or the parliament, and the president has the final say in decisions. Ireland also has a constitution, which establishes laws and rights for the country's citizens.
Ancient Ireland had its own language, Irish Gaelic, which has gradually disappeared due to the efforts on behalf of the British to eliminate the Irish culture. While Gaelic is not as commonly used as it was before, it is still considered one of the official languages of Ireland. As for celebrations, Ireland is full of colorful traditions, one being the famous holiday Halloween, or All Hallows' Eve as it was traditionally called. All Hallows' Eve itself is a version of the ancient Irish holiday Samhain. Samhain was a pagan holiday celebrated by the Celtic people, meant to scare away ghosts and other malevolent spirits. It was held on November 1st, however, after Catholic and Christian religion influences took over, Samhain was forgotten and replaced with All Saints' Day. This takeover of the Christian religion led to other such holidays as St. Patrick's Day, as it commemorates the arrival of the religion in Ireland and took over the formerly pagan country. As previously mentioned, Ireland is known for its potatoes, but they are also known for their fish and beer. Ireland being an island country, most of its food is found in the sea. One such fish they are known for is their smoked salmon. However, many of their dishes have both potato and fish in them. Such dishes are seafood chowder and fisherman's pie. During times when many food items weren't available to them, such as the Irish famine of the 1840s, the Irish would make potato soups, champ, and a dish called coddle, which is a leftover stew. These dishes are now cooked everywhere in Ireland, especially in rural areas. In the past, Ireland's main exports were crops and livestock, which they sent to Britain. Ireland, being surrounded by the ocean, also exported large amounts of fish, and the forestry industry was a very large export system as well. World War II also increased jobs due to the demand of manufacturing for the war effort, though this would not last at the same level after the war's end. The economy of this era was generally poor, as Britain was privy to nearly all of the revenue made by exports. Today, many of these industries remain Ireland's main exports, but due to their independence, they branched out and became more of a business center. Today, they have the second wealthiest economy in Europe. Being low on natural resources other than lumber, Ireland's main imports are natural gas, oil, and minerals used in construction. The country used the British pound sterling until switching to the euro in 1979. Due to the 2022 war in Ukraine, Ireland has been preparing for what may happen if the war reaches them. Like many other countries, some people in Ireland have a desire for some form of justice for Ukraine. To them, this can either take the form of active military participation or a more passive acceptance of refugees that reach the island country. The latter option is not out of character for the country, as in World War II, Ireland housed refugees. However, there is a third option that, while most agree would be the safest option, is morally questionable to civilians. This would be to stay entirely uninvolved and militarily neutral. As events unfold in Ukraine, a concrete decision remains to be made. In 2022, it was confirmed that in over 22 countries, 9 of which are European countries, including Ireland, cases of children being diagnosed with hepatitis have dramatically increased. It is unclear why this is happening, though there is speculation that it may somehow have been affected by COVID-19 irritating the children's immune systems. Of the 429 new cases, several children have died, one being from Ireland. At this time, there's no certainty of the cause of this rise in cases, but it is expected that there will be more by the end of the year. Ireland has a surplus of laws that are very unique and very strange, most of which stem from their history with Britain. One such law would be the Proclamation of 1817, which was a law that designated potatoes and porridge to, quote-unquote, lower orders, or the poor people of Ireland, thus preventing many of the wealthier citizens from eating such foods during the famine. Another strange law is Fasting and Humiliation Day, announced in 1665, usually held on the first Wednesday of each month. This law was set in place during the bubonic plague's rampage in London and hopes to offer relief to London by repenting to God. A law was just repealed in 2015, making it legal to criticize King Henry VIII about divorcing his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, for Anne Boleyn, which at the time infuriated many of the Irish Catholics who loved Catherine and believed her to be his one true wife before he created the Church of England simply to marry Anne Boleyn. Along with these, several other laws were recently repealed in 2015 as they became obsolete and no longer needed. Ireland has a voice in Europe, as it is part of the European Union and United Nations. Both the EU and the UN are organizations set up to protect their people and foreign allies, and better the lives of their own people. Ireland's hope is to improve the world for its people, and it uses its voice to speak out on topics such as climate change, the ongoing crisis in Ukraine, foreign aid, and cyber usage. Ireland has 5 goals it hopes to have effect on the world. First is to support its people, both foreign and domestically. Second is to share its values with the world. Third is to allow for prosperity and global economics. Fourth is to maintain a presence and voice in Europe. And lastly, hope to have a lasting effect on the world. With these aspirations, Ireland has opened more than 80 diplomatic offices in the world and places state agency offices in 42 locations in Europe, allowing for easy communication and trade with Ireland and the rest of the world.